Let me quickly cut across to a panelist joining us for a little perspective on what's happening in Ukraine. Hanna Shelest, editor-in-chief of Ukraine Analytica, who's joining us live from Odessa. Hanna, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We know that Russia assured that they will pull back, they will scale down operations in parts of Kiev, the suburbs of Kiev. They will shift focus to the Donbas region. But while the forces retracted, allegations are that they attempted to mass kill civilians along the Kiev suburb region. How true is this fact? Because Russia now saying that this is Ukraine's staged theory only to feed the Western media.
You know, this Russian propaganda is not even the propaganda. That is the yet one war crime to lie so about the events, because so many international journalists and international organizations themselves were able to see the atrocities and war crime. That is not one town and one quarter that Russians are claiming. Bucha is quite a big town, and it's not only Bucha, but Irpin, Vorzel, Makariv, and plenty of the villages around. We are talking about really hundreds and hundreds of bodies. That is not something to stage, first of all. The second, there is no sense of doing it. And the third, we have even the satellite photos confirming that some bodies on the streets being perfectly visible at these satellite photos something like 10 days ago. So these people being laying, not burning just on the streets. And you know what Russia is now saying about Bucha? It is just demonstrating of their complete ignorance of the human being. Not only international law is what they've been doing, but just of the normal respect to the human life. Moreover, you know, you have the indirect proofs of this, because there is not only killings, but extreme looting and robbing of the houses. And here you can see plenty of videos now of the Russian soldiers sending all what they robbed from the Ukrainian houses and the Belarus from the post offices. The hackers already demonstrated all these videos, and there are plenty of proofs. So all this behavior, it is extremely out of any logic of the war, if it is the normal war, but not just the attempt to genocide the population of Ukraine.
You know, but many rounds of negotiations between the two countries hasn't deterred Russia. So long we see them only stepping up their attacks. In fact, they refuse to admit to any of the allegations of civilian killings. But here you have your President Zelensky saying that in the days to come, several other cities and areas which are liberated might face civilian onslaught. Does this really scare away many of those civilians in your country who are living there trying to escape this Russian attack? How are you handling your people? How are you instilling confidence for them to remain put in those areas that could be called safe zones?
It depends from which regions, because, for example, in the eastern regions, the local authorities already asked the civilians if they have this possibility to leave their villages if they are very close to the contact line. So in this way, it will make it easier for the armed forces to fight and to minimize the civilian casualties. In such places as Mariupol, you know, we don't have access for all these weeks, and even the Red Cross doesn't have a proper access. Russians are not allowing them in the city. But at the same time, unfortunately, we can't say that you are absolutely safe in other parts of Ukraine. Like my city is 800 kilometers from the east, and on Sunday we had very heavy shelling early in the morning. And before we hope that there is no real fighting, we are risk city, but we are not with the fighting. But 6 missiles from Crimea being shelled here. The same Lviv. Lviv is almost 2,000 kilometers from the east. Nevertheless, Russians have been targeting the fuel storages, the critical infrastructure, and I can name you plenty of other examples in different parts of the countries. So as for now, what we notice that Russians have 3 goals of their military activities. One is targeting civilians, so they will be afraid, and that's what you've seen on the north of the country and in Mariupol. Then you have the attempts to occupy the whole Donbas. That is fighting that is happening on the land. But the third, they are targeting our agricultural storage and our fuel storage. You need to understand that what is happening now, it is exactly the time when we need to start seeding. So to have the agriculture, wheat, grains, that, by the way, India is one of the biggest buyers of Ukrainian grains. So as a result, now they are trying to prevent us from starting this process. And I'm afraid that by autumn, it can lead to the very serious problems with the agriculture supplies to the international markets.
You know, all heart going out to those civilians who are truly bearing the brunt of this onslaught. Russia continues its war on Ukraine. What exactly is Russia looking at this point? After many rounds of negotiations, after much of the civilian killings that we see has unfolded in your country, is there a demand that Russia is putting forth only so that if you agree, will they retract peacefully? Anything that has come up in your talks, any kind of solution that you're looking at as hope?
Ukraine is definitely looking for one solution. It is the restoration of our territorial integrity and getting out of the Russian forces who are just open aggressors, because you need to understand that it is not the conflict that we are fighting against them at their territory, or we are pretending to something at their territory. It is the open act of aggression. So here it is quite difficult to say just the negotiation. The problem is, what are the Russian goals? And when Russians are saying one thing at the international forum, at the same time, just yesterday, they published several articles in their main information agencies that are completely humiliating Ukraine, that they are saying that Ukraine is not a nation, that Ukraine as a name for the country should be erased, that Ukrainians should be punished, and so on and so on. These articles, you know, it is worse than what I read in the history books about the Second World War. And when the governmental information agencies publish something like this, you understand that just to negotiate about amount of soldiers in our armed forces or which military alliance we would join in the future is definitely not something what would satisfy many in the Russian Federation. And that is the tragedy for people of both countries, for sure. So what we definitely understand that Russians need the agreement that will humiliate Ukrainians politically and diplomatically. The second, they definitely would like now to take at least some part of Ukrainian territory. That's why we see the intensification of the actions on the east, because they need to present at least some victory for their people. So not being able to take the north of the country and the capital as they wanted in 2 days, now they are trying to do this on the east around Donetsk and Lugansk regions.
Right. You know, Hanna, thank you very much. This war might end one day, but the number of civilian casualties, the number of your citizens who've lost their loved ones, it's highly unfortunate. Our heart going out to them, our prayers with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, we're looking at global outrage over civilian killings in Bucha. Ukraine has now accused Russia of war crimes on large scale in Kiev suburbs. Ukrainian President Zelensky has termed the killings as a genocide. Moscow, meanwhile, has called Ukraine's version of Bucha killings a fake attack. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has now sought a war crime trial against Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here's more on that.
On the streets, inside houses, in the fields, when Russian forces retreated from Bucha, a Kyiv suburb, bodies of civilians were found strewn across the landscape. Many of them had their hands tied. Since the withdrawal, horrific images of mass grave sites have emerged. The footage from Bucha has sent shockwaves across the world. Ukraine has accused Russia of war crimes. As outrage builds over war atrocities, Moscow has termed the killings on Kyiv's outskirts a fake attack.
The other day, a fake news about an attack in Bucha was doing the rounds. But the Russian army had left the place according to the agreement. A few days later, a fake stage video was spread through social media by Ukraine and the West.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday visited the town and met with the residents. He called the killings a genocide.
It's war crime that will be recognized as genocide by the world. You are here and you will see what has happened. We know about thousands of killed and tortured people with cut limbs, about raped women and killed children. I think it's more than genocide.
Reacting to the images of dead bodies in Bucha, US President Joe Biden once again called Vladimir Putin a war criminal.
You may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter is so what happened in Bucha. this warrants him, he is a war criminal. But we have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight. And we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial. This guy is brutal. And what's happening in Bucha is outrageous. And everyone's seen it.
Germany, which was accused of being soft on Russia due to its dependence on Moscow for gas supply, has also called the killings a war crime.
The images of the past weekend have once again highlighted a new, brutal dimension of this war, with the most serious war crimes and crime against humanity. And that is why I made it clear over the weekend that we must not only close the remaining loopholes in the sanctions system, but that we must also intensively and rigorously implement this package.
As per international law, civilians cannot be deliberately attacked in a war. Pictures coming from Bucha are appalling and clearly show the violation of the code. But indicting Putin for alleged war crimes is easier said than done. This leads to another question. Are economic sanctions the counter to Putin's alleged atrocities in Ukraine? With Gaurav Sawant in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
Meanwhile, the West is clamoring to try Russia for genocide after these horrific images emerged from Bucha. Until just a few weeks ago, Bucha was a thriving suburb of Kiev. It was known for its peaceful green surroundings and now completely unrecognizable. Let's have a look at the atrocities meted out in that town of Bucha.
In diesen Stunden erreichen uns furchtbare und grauenerregende Aufnahmen aus der Ukraine. Wir sehen Dutzende erschossene Zivilisten in Bucha, ein Gebiet nördlich von Kiew.
Bucha, a tiny city on the outskirts of Kyiv, has become the site of the most barbaric Russian action in the 40-day war. Russian forces have left a trail of death and destruction as it retreated from the area. The massacre of innocents has shocked the world. Before the Russian invasion, Bucha was a thriving town of 37,000 people. Because of its strategic location close to the capital and the Kyiv-Kovel railway line built in 1898, it was a booming town economically. Many of them are now dead, murdered in a war that Russia claims is to right everything that is wrong in Ukraine. On 2nd April, Ukrainian troops moved further north of the capital Kyiv, taking up positions in the town of Bucha after retaking territory from Russian forces. And this is what they found.
Those people were just walking and they shot them without any reason. Bang. In the next neighborhood, Stekolka, it was even worse. They would shoot without asking any questions.
There were others found crushed inside their cars by the Russian army.
He was a resident. He worked in landscaping. A peaceful, honest person. A smart man who loved to work. And this simply crushed him to death.
Russia has denied the killings, but Bucha bears the brutal marks of Russia's brutality. The United Nations has launched an independent probe into the massacre in Bucha. The West says the horrors committed in the city could lead to more sanctions against Russia. Bureau Report, India Today.
Ukraine indeed is a beautiful country filled with bustling cities, several tourist sites, once brimming with life, and urban settlements. Now, that country has been reduced to rubble. Here's some of those before and after images of towns that are now either in ruins or have completely turned into ghost towns.